She agreed to the Lakota chief's proposal. As 200 people wished them dead, Alina had always been curious about the world beyond the small frontier town where she grew up. The town was quiet, with dusty streets, wooden houses, and a small market where neighbors met to exchange goods and news. People in the town were careful about strangers, especially those who lived in the nearby lands. Stories about the Lakota people had reached the town for years. Some said they were fierce warriors. Others spoke of their wisdom, their deep connection to the land, and their strong family and community bonds. For many in the town, these stories were mixed with fear. Most townspeople avoided the area entirely, believing it dangerous. But Alina had never been afraid of stories or rumors. Her curiosity was stronger than the warnings, and she wanted to see for herself what the world beyond her town was truly like. From a young age, Alina had been different. While other girls in her town dreamed only of marriage and household life, she dreamed of adventure and understanding. She often wandered through the hills near her town, studying the birds, the rivers, and the plants. She loved listening to stories of distant places and people. One evening, she overheard travelers speaking about the Lakota village hidden along a riverbank not far from the town. They described the village as a place of beauty, where people lived in harmony with nature and had customs that were unlike anything Alina had seen. That night, she couldn't stop thinking about it. She felt a strange pull, almost as if the village itself was calling her to visit. Alina knew that visiting the village would not be easy. Her family, though kind, had strict ideas about safety and reputation. They warned her repeatedly about the dangers of leaving the town and approaching lands that outsiders rarely entered. "It is not safe for a young woman alone," her father said firmly. "You do not know what awaits you there. You must think of your life, your future." Her mother nodded in agreement, her face lined with worry. "There are things you cannot understand from stories," she said softly. "Some things are not meant for outsiders." But Alina could not let fear decide for her. Deep in her heart, she felt that learning about the Lakota people, meeting them, and understanding their way of life was something she had to do. She spent days preparing for her journey. She packed simple clothes, food for several days, and a small journal where she could write her observations. She also carried a small gift for the Lakota people, a finely sewn blanket her grandmother had made, symbolizing respect and goodwill. As she set out early one morning, the town was quiet. Some neighbors whispered behind her back, questioning her wisdom. Rumors spread quickly, and soon over 200 people in the town openly expressed their wish that Alina would not succeed in her journey. They feared the unknown and worried that Alina would betray their town in some way by forming bonds with the Lakota people. Despite the murmurs, Alina walked on, her heart steady, her mind focused. The journey to the village was not easy. The roads were rough, winding through forests and across rivers. Birds chirped in the early mornings, and the wind carried the scent of wildflowers and fresh earth. Sometimes Alina felt afraid. She imagined what could go wrong. She could get lost, she could meet hostile strangers, or the villagers might reject her. But she also reminded herself of the purpose of her journey. She was not going to confront anyone. She only wanted to observe, learn, and show respect. Every step she took was filled with a quiet determination that gave her courage. After 2 days of travel, Alina finally saw the Lakota village. It lay along a wide river, surrounded by gentle hills. Smoke rose from small fires, and people moved about their daily activities with a calm purpose. She noticed children running and laughing, women tending gardens and weaving cloth, and men preparing tools and checking the horses. The village was alive, full of rhythm and harmony. Alina felt a mixture of awe and nervousness. She knew she was an outsider and that her presence might not be welcomed immediately. Her first encounter with Chief Wakasa was unlike anything she had imagined. He was not imposing in a frightening way. Rather, he carried an air of calm authority. His eyes were wise, as if they had seen many seasons and understood the cycles of life. He greeted her politely, yet with caution, sensing that she had come with respect rather than fear or arrogance. "Welcome," he said, his voice steady and warm. "It is unusual to see a visitor from your lands. Tell me what brings you here." Alina bowed slightly, offering the blanket her grandmother had made. "I come with respect," she said softly. "I want to understand your people and learn from you. I mean no harm." The villagers watched closely. Some whispered to each other, unsure of whether they could trust her. Others simply observed with curiosity. The presence of an outsider, especially a young woman, was rare and carried potential danger in their eyes. Yet Wakasa spoke kindly on her behalf, explaining that Alina had traveled a long distance and sought only understanding. Over the next few hours, he introduced her to the village, showing her the communal spaces, the areas where people cooked, worked, and rested. Alina listened attentively, asking questions respectfully, and quickly learned about the traditions, the stories, and the responsibilities each person had in the community. Despite the welcoming gestures, Alina could feel the tension in the air. The villagers were careful, watching her expressions, noting her movements. She understood that trust would not come easily. Meanwhile, back in the frontier town, over 200 people were openly discussing her visit, many of them angry or fearful. They believed that she was making a dangerous mistake, choosing to involve herself with people they did not understand. Some feared for her safety. Others feared what her choice could mean for their own beliefs and prejudices. The weight of their wishes pressed on Alina in a subtle way, but she reminded herself that courage sometimes meant standing alone, and that understanding could not be built on fear. As evening approached, Wakasa invited Alina to sit by a fire with him and a few elders. The flames flickered, casting shadows that danced across their faces. He spoke of the importance of balance between people, between nature and within oneself. Alina listened, fascinated, realizing that this wisdom was not just in words but in the way the community lived each day. She began to see patterns in their life, understanding why the villagers acted with caution, why the elders spoke with patience, and why respect was central to every interaction. She felt a growing sense of admiration, mixed with a deep respect for their ways. By the end of the first day, Alina had learned enough to realize that her journey was not just about seeing a new place. It was about connecting with people, understanding their lives, and experiencing the strength and beauty of a culture that had existed far longer than her own. Town. She felt both excitement and nervousness for what lay ahead. She knew she was entering a world where every step mattered, where trust had to be earned, and where danger could come from misunderstanding as easily as from malice. Yet, despite all warnings, doubts, and threats, she felt a quiet determination growing inside her, a determination that this journey, though dangerous, was the right path. Night fell over the village, and Alina lay in a small guest space provided by Wakasa. Outside, the wind rustled the trees, and the river reflected the moonlight. She could still hear the faint sounds of the town, the worries of the 200 people who wished her journey would fail. But here, in the quiet of the village, Alina felt a sense of purpose she had never known. She realized that the story of her life was changing at that very moment. She was no longer just a girl from a small frontier town. She was a visitor in a world rich with history, wisdom, and courage. And little did she know, the next days would bring choices and challenges that would test her heart, her bravery, and the depth of her understanding like never before. The morning after her arrival, Alina woke to the soft sound of the river flowing and the gentle calls of birds. Welcoming the sun. The village was already alive with activity. Children ran across the open spaces, their laughter filling the air, while women prepared food and mended clothes. Men moved among the horses, checking their equipment, and elders walked slowly, offering guidance and instruction where needed. Alina watched quietly, feeling both awe and a sense of belonging she had not anticipated. The village was full of life, yet it carried an air of careful balance. Every action seemed connected to another, as if each person knew their place in the larger rhythm of the community. Wakasa, the chief, appeared soon after sunrise. His presence was calm but commanding. He greeted Alina with a slight bow and a smile that was warm but thoughtful. "Good morning, Alina," he said. "I hope your first night here was peaceful." Alina nodded, smiling back. "It was more than peaceful," she said. I feel as if I am learning something important already. There is so much life here, so much care in the way people act." Wakasa's eyes twinkled. "Observation is the first step to understanding," he said. "But understanding comes not only from watching but from participating. You must experience, not just see." Over the next few days, Alina was introduced to various members of the community. She learned how women wove intricate patterns into cloth, how they prepared meals that were nourishing and symbolic, and how they cared for their children with patience and love. She watched men tend to the horses and taught young boys the importance of respect for animals and the land. The elders shared stories of the past, tales of courage, wisdom, and lessons learned from hardship. Alina listened attentively, asking questions respectfully, and slowly she began to feel accepted, not fully yet, but enough that she was allowed to move among the villagers with guidance rather than suspicion. During this time, Alina and Wakasa spent longer hours together. He showed her parts of the village that were less obvious, places where the community gathered for spiritual reflection and for teaching the young. He explained the meaning behind ceremonies and traditions, and Alina marveled at the depth of thought and care behind each act. She realized that the Lakota people were not just living day to day. They were living with purpose, and every action had a meaning that went far beyond what she had experienced in her town. She admired Wakasa's wisdom and the way he balanced authority with kindness. One evening, as the sky was painted with hues of orange and pink, Wakasa asked Alina to walk with him to a quiet area near the river. The air was warm, and the scent of wildflowers mixed with the earthy aroma of the river. Birds flew across the sky, heading to their nests, and the world seemed to pause for a moment, quiet and perfect. Wakasa looked at her with a serious but gentle expression. "Alina," he began, "I have observed you since your arrival. You have shown respect, courage, and an open heart. These qualities are rare. I want to ask you something important, something that may change both our lives." Alina's heart raced. She felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She nodded for him to continue. "I wish to ask you to become my wife," Wakasa said. His voice was calm, steady, but it carried the weight of sincerity. "Not as a conquest, not as a formality, but because I see in you a spirit that is strong, compassionate, and true. I believe that together we can build understanding between our peoples." Alina was stunned. She had anticipated friendship, respect, and learning, but a proposal. It was far beyond what she had imagined. Her mind raced, thinking of the implications, the joy, the danger, the curiosity, and the fear. Alina took a deep breath. "Wakasa," she said softly, I need time to think. This is unexpected." Wakasa nodded. "I understand," he said. "Take the time you need. My offer is not rushed, and I respect your choice. Know that your decision will carry weight, but it must be made from your heart." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the river and the rustling leaves. Alina felt a strange mix of fear and excitement, knowing that whatever choice she made could alter her life forever. Meanwhile, news of the proposal slowly reached the frontier town. Over 200 people had already been watching Alina's journey closely, and now their anger and fear grew stronger. Some whispered that she was betraying her people, others feared for her safety, and a few thought that her union with Wakasa could bring shame or danger to their community. Rumors spread quickly, and the tension among the townspeople was almost tangible. Threats began circulating, though mostly in words. They believed Alina was making a mistake that could never be undone, and many wished that the proposal would fail. Despite the threats and rumors, Alina continued to observe and participate in village life. She realized that the proposal was not just a test of her feelings for Wicasa, but a test of her courage. Accepting could bring happiness, connection, and a bridge between cultures, but it also carried real danger. She could face hostility from the town she had grown up in, and the Lakota community, though welcoming, could face their own challenges if they were seen as involving her improperly. Every conversation, every smile, and every small act became a decision. She had to weigh love, respect, and responsibility together. Wicasa, understanding the pressure Alina faced, never pushed her. He continued to include her in village activities, showing her ceremonies, teaching her the meaning of songs and dances, and explaining the importance of rituals. He wanted her to feel confident and informed before making a choice. Alina, in turn, found herself drawn not only to Wicasa's strength and wisdom, but also to the values of his people. She admired their resilience, their care for the earth, and the respect they had for each other. The longer she stayed, the more she felt that her decision must be guided not by fear, but by truth and understanding. Tension continued to rise as the townspeople became more vocal. Some sent messengers, others tried to intimidate her by appearing near the village. But Wicasa and his people were careful, ensuring that Alina's safety was protected while maintaining respect for the outsiders. Alina learned the delicate balance of diplomacy and courage, realizing that her choice would not only affect her but also the lives of those around her. Every day she stayed in the village, she understood more deeply that love and courage were not simple matters. They were acts that required wisdom, patience, and sometimes great personal risk. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills and the sky turned deep red, Wicasa and Alina sat again by the river. "Alina," he said softly, "what you feel is important. You are at a crossroads. Fear will whisper in your ear, but your heart will know the right path. You have the courage to choose, and whatever you decide, you must act with honesty." Alina looked at the reflection of the sun in the river and thought of her town, the 200 people who opposed her, and the village that had welcomed her. She realized that fear could not guide her, only truth, respect, and understanding could. By the time the stars filled the night sky, Alina knew that a decision was approaching. She could no longer remain undecided, though she also knew that her choice must be made carefully. Accepting Wicasa's proposal would mean embracing a world she barely knew, facing possible hatred from her own people, and risking her safety. But it would also mean connection, love, and a chance to bridge two cultures in a meaningful way. She understood that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. The days that followed would test Alina's resolve. She would face whispers, threats, and the expectations of both her old town and her new community. But in this moment, sitting beside Wicasa and listening to the river, she felt a sense of purpose she had never known. The proposal was more than a question of marriage. It was a question of trust, of bravery, and of the power of understanding across worlds. Alina realized that whatever happened, she would not take this choice lightly. She would consider her heart, her respect for the people who had welcomed her, and the courage it would take to face the 200 people who wished her failure. And in the quiet night, under a sky full of stars, Alina made the first promise to herself, that she would act with honesty, that she would be brave, and that she would not allow fear to guide her. Her journey had taken her to a new world, introduced her to people she could admire and learn from, and now presented her with a choice that could change her life forever. She knew the coming days would be difficult, but she also knew that this challenge, though frightening, was an opportunity to do something meaningful, brave, and true. Alina woke that morning with a sense of unease she could not easily shake. The village, as always, was alive with movement, the children laughing, the women preparing food, the men working with the horses. But there was a tension in the air she had begun to notice over the past few days. Wakasa, the chief, greeted her with a calm smile, but she could sense that even he felt the weight of what was coming. It was clear now that the news of his proposal had spread far beyond the village. Rumors traveled faster than the river's current, and she knew that the frontier town, her own home, had learned of her decision. Over 200 townspeople, whose opinions once seemed distant and insignificant, had become a looming threat. Some had sent word that they wished her harm, though mostly in whispers and warnings. Others had taken more direct action, sending messengers to watch her, to question the villagers about her presence, and to hint that her journey could end badly if she did not return. Alina felt a tight knot in her stomach. She had anticipated opposition, but the scale of it, the intensity, the anger, the fear, was overwhelming. Her heart ached for the people she had grown up with, but she also understood that their fear could not dictate her life. Wakasa, sensing her anxiety, suggested they take a walk along the river. As they moved quietly between the trees and tall grasses, he spoke gently. "Alina, the path you have chosen is not easy. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act despite it. You are standing at the boundary of two worlds, and each step will test your heart." Alina nodded, gripping the small blanket she had brought from her town. "I understand," she said softly. "I know some people hate what I am doing. Some even want me gone. But I cannot let fear guide me. I cannot turn back now." Wakasa smiled slightly, proud of her determination. "Then we must be prepared," he said. "Prepared for both the expected and the unexpected, and we must act with wisdom." In the days that followed, Alina found herself learning more than ever about both courage and community. She joined the women in weaving, learning the intricate patterns and the care that went into every thread. She observed the men as they tended the horses, understanding the responsibility required to care for such strong and valuable animals. She spoke with the elders, listening to their stories and learning the lessons hidden in history. Every day she participated, every day she earned a little more trust. But every night her thoughts returned to her town, to the people who opposed her, and to the fear that something could go terribly wrong. Tensions reached a critical point when a group of men from her town arrived at the edge of the village. They did not enter the village openly. They stayed hidden along the trees, watching from a distance. Alina had seen them through the tall grass while walking near the river. Her heart pounded, but she did not run. Instead, she approached Wakasa quietly and explained what she had seen. The chief nodded gravely. "They are angry," he said. "They do not understand. They see your choice as betrayal, and fear clouds their judgment. But we cannot let them dictate our actions. We must remain calm and act with reason." Alina and Wakasa called a meeting with the village elders. Together, they discussed how to handle the threat without causing unnecessary conflict. Wakasa emphasized diplomacy over confrontation, and the elders agreed. They arranged for watchful protection near the village borders while continuing their daily routines. The goal was not to provoke the townspeople, but to ensure that Alina's presence remained safe and respectful. Alina marveled at the careful balance of wisdom and caution, realizing that courage was not just about facing danger. It was about planning, understanding, and protecting those you cared for. Despite the tension, Alina found moments of peace and connection. She spent time with the children, teaching them simple games and learning their laughter and joy. She helped women prepare food and learned how each ingredient had meaning beyond nourishment, reflecting traditions passed down for generations. She sat with the elders, absorbing the stories and discovering a depth of knowledge she had never imagined. In these moments, Alina understood that life in the village was a mixture of simplicity and profound meaning. She also realized that these connections made the threats from her town even heavier. The bonds she had formed gave her a reason to protect herself and the people who had welcomed her. The pressure from the frontier town escalated. Rumors of armed groups, of secret plans to intervene, and of angry townspeople who would stop at nothing reached Alina's ears through travelers and villagers. She knew that the situation could become dangerous at any moment. Every day, she felt the weight of the 200 people who wished her harm. She could not ignore it, but she refused to let it control her. Wakasa reminded her often that fear could be a tool if managed wisely, but a trap if allowed to dominate. Alina began practicing patience and strategy, understanding that the coming days required careful thought, courage, and strength. One afternoon, Wakasa invited Alina to a ceremony near the center of the village. It was not a celebration, but a ritual of protection and respect. The villagers gathered, forming a circle of strength around the central fire. Songs were sung, words were spoken, and each person offered thoughts of peace and guidance. Alina felt a deep sense of connection as she participated. She realized that this ceremony was not only for her protection, but also a test of her commitment to understanding and respect. She felt the power of the village, the collective strength of the people, and the weight of responsibility that came with her choices. Night fell, and the hidden men from the town became more active, though they did not enter the village. Their presence was felt in the tension in the air, the whispers of the wind, and the occasional movement among the trees. Alina and Wakasa sat near the river speaking in low tones. "They are watching," she said. "I can feel it." Wakasa nodded. "Yes," he replied, "and that is why we must be careful. Fear can blind them, but it cannot blind us. We will protect what is rightfully ours without anger, without hate. We will act with courage and with wisdom." Alina felt her heart swell with admiration for the chief and the villagers. She realized that courage was not just about facing threats head-on. It was about understanding the situation, making wise decisions, and protecting those you loved. She understood that her life and her choice had become a symbol, a bridge between two worlds, one of respect and understanding, the other of fear and opposition. And she knew that her actions now could influence both communities for years to come. As the nights passed, Alina continued her learning. She listened to stories of past conflicts, of challenges overcome, and of courage shown in difficult circumstances. She began to see patterns in the ways people acted, the importance of communication, and the value of patience. Every interaction became a lesson. Every choice became a test of her heart. She understood that the journey was far from over and that the greatest challenges were still ahead. The days turned into a week, and Alina could see the tension in her town growing stronger. Messages arrived sporadically, sometimes threatening, sometimes pleading. The people who opposed her did not understand the bond she had formed with Wakasa or the trust she had earned in the village. They saw only what they feared, the unknown, the change, and what they considered a betrayal of their ways. Alina knew that to succeed, she must remain steadfast, honor the people who had trusted her, and act with courage that came from knowledge and understanding, not recklessness. Alina also began to feel a stronger connection to Wakasa. His patience, wisdom, and calm presence were a source of comfort in the midst of uncertainty. She admired not only his leadership, but also his deep understanding of human nature, his respect for life, and his ability to act without letting anger guide him. She realized that her growing feelings for him were intertwined with her respect for the village and the culture she was learning to love. This understanding deepened her resolve to make careful, courageous decisions in the days to come. By the end of the week, Alina had come to understand one important truth. Courage was not just about facing immediate danger. It was about making choices that were right, even when surrounded by fear and opposition. It was about protecting those who trusted you, honoring the bonds you had formed, and standing firm in your principles. The presence of over 200 people who wished her harm could not deter her. The village had become a second home, and Wakasa a guide, friend, and now someone she cared deeply for. And so, as the sun set behind the hills and painted the sky with fiery orange and gold, Alina sat by the river once more. She thought of the challenges that still lay ahead, of the whispers and threats from her town, and of the courage she would need in the coming days. She also felt a quiet sense of determination and strength. She understood that her journey was no longer just about curiosity or adventure. It was about love, responsibility, and the courage to stand firm in the face of overwhelming opposition. The days that followed brought a tension heavier than Alina had ever felt. Word of her presence and the proposal had reached the frontier town with growing urgency, and the whispers of disapproval had turned into open threats. Over 200 people now openly expressed their wish that she would fail, that she would turn back, or that she would suffer for her decision. Yet, Alina could not turn back. Her heart, her respect for the village, and her growing feelings for Wicasa compelled her forward. She knew that courage did not mean ignoring danger. It meant facing it with wisdom, patience, and strength. Wicasa met with Alina one morning by the river, his face serious. "Alina," he said, "the time has come when we must act with both courage and prudence. There are those who do not understand our intentions. They may try to intervene to stop what they fear. You must be prepared." Alina nodded, her mind focused. She felt a mixture of fear and determination, but she also felt a sense of readiness she had not known before. She understood that this was not a matter of rushing into danger, but of preparing herself and the village for what might come. The villagers gathered to discuss the situation. Wicasa called the elders together, and Alina joined them quietly, observing the careful planning that went into every decision. The goal was clear: protect the village, protect Alina, and avoid unnecessary conflict. Each elder offered wisdom drawn from years of experience. Some suggested subtle defenses around the village perimeter. Others recommended sending messages to the frontier town, attempting to communicate the peaceful intentions of the village and the respect with which Alina had approached them. Every suggestion was weighed carefully. Alina realized that courage in this community was not just physical. It was also about strategy, communication, and calm leadership. Despite the preparations, the presence of the town's armed men could not be ignored. One afternoon, Alina noticed movement near the trees along the riverbank. Shadows shifted, and the faint glint of sunlight on metal suggested the presence of weapons. Her heart raced, but she stayed calm, knowing that panic would do no good. Wicasa approached her quietly. "They are testing us," he said softly. "Do not fear. We will protect what is rightfully ours, and we will do so without anger. Fear can blind them, but it cannot blind us." Alina nodded. She trusted him, but she also understood that her own courage would be tested in ways she had never imagined. The confrontation began quietly. Messengers from the town arrived at the outskirts, speaking in tense tones. Their message was clear: Alina must return immediately or there could be consequences. Wicasa and the elders listened patiently, responding with calm, reasoned words. They emphasized peace and understanding, explaining that Alina had come with respect and had not intended to cause conflict. The messengers left uncertain, their anger mixed with confusion. Alina realized that diplomacy, patience, and courage were all as important as physical safety. That night, the village held a small gathering to prepare for the possibility of further threats. Firelight danced on the faces of the villagers as they spoke quietly, sharing stories of past challenges and the ways they had been overcome. Alina felt a deep connection to these people, a sense of belonging she had never known in her own town. She understood that her actions now would not only affect her life but also the lives of everyone in the village. The weight of responsibility was heavy, but it was also empowering. She could see the strength in community, in shared purpose, and in calm, deliberate courage. As the days passed, the tension grew. Scouts reported more movement near the village, and rumors of potential armed groups spread among the people. Alina felt the pressure keenly. The thought of over 200 people wishing her harm was always in the back of her mind, but she refused to let it control her. Instead, she focused on her connection with the village, her respect for their ways, and the trust she had earned. She practiced patience, careful observation, and quiet courage. Every interaction became a lesson in understanding, every decision a test of her resolve. One afternoon, Wakasa took Alina aside to the highest hill overlooking the village. From there they could see the surrounding forests, the river, and the distant outline of the town. "Alina," he said, "the choices we make now will shape more than just our lives. They will shape the relationship between our people, the trust we have built, and the example we set for the future. You must be brave but also wise. Courage alone is not enough." Alina listened, absorbing every word. She felt the gravity of her position, the delicate balance between love, respect, and the dangers she faced. She also felt a renewed sense of determination. She would not allow fear to guide her actions. As evening fell, the first signs of confrontation appeared. A small group of men from the frontier town approached, their intentions unclear but their presence unmistakable. Alina's heart pounded, yet she remained calm, standing beside Wakasa. The chief stepped forward, his voice steady and commanding. "We do not wish for conflict," he said. "Alina has come here with respect. We ask that you leave peacefully. Violence will only bring harm to all." The men paused, uncertainty in their eyes. Some whispered to each other, considering the calm confidence of the village and the wisdom in Wakasa's words. Alina realized that courage often involved standing firm without aggression, showing strength without provoking fear. Over the next several hours, dialogue continued. Wakasa spoke with patience, explaining the values of his people and the respect with which Alina had approached them. The villagers, led by their elders, participated quietly, reinforcing the sense of unity and strength. Alina observed, learning that courage and leadership were not about loud proclamations or force, but about steady resolve, clear communication, and calm presence. The group from the town eventually withdrew, unsure of how to proceed. Alina felt a surge of relief, tempered by the understanding that challenges were not yet over. That night, as the village settled under the stars, Alina sat by the river with Wakasa. The air was cool and still, carrying the scent of earth and water. "Today was a test," he said softly, "not just for you but for all of us. You have shown courage, respect, and wisdom, but the path ahead will continue to test these qualities. Remember that true strength lies in calm, in preparation, and in the willingness to act with both heart and mind." Alina nodded. She felt a quiet pride but also a deep awareness of the risks that remained. She understood that courage was ongoing, not a single act. Over the following days, Alina continued to participate fully in village life, despite the shadow of opposition from her town. She learned more about traditions, ceremonies, and the daily responsibilities that held the community together. Each activity reinforced the lessons of courage, patience, and careful judgment she had already begun to learn. She felt herself growing stronger, more confident, and more connected to the people around her. She also felt a growing bond with Wakasa, built on trust, respect, and shared understanding. The climax of this period came when scouts reported a larger group approaching the village, more determined than before. The villagers prepared carefully, following the plans they had made with calm precision. Alina worked alongside them, contributing where she could, observing the careful balance of courage and strategy that guided every action. Wakasa led the community with calm authority, demonstrating that bravery was not about reckless action, but about careful planning, wisdom, and the protection of all involved. As the new threat approached, Alina felt a mixture of fear, anticipation, and determination. She knew that the coming moments would test everything she had learned about courage, love, and responsibility. But she also knew that she was not alone. The village had become her home, and Wicasa her guide. She understood that true bravery was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act rightly despite it. And in that understanding, she found the strength to face whatever came next. The morning after the tense confrontation brought a strange calm over the village. The men from the frontier town had withdrawn, at least for the moment, leaving the community to breathe again. But the weight of what had happened lingered. Elena woke early, the sounds of the river and the birds offering comfort, but her mind was restless. She had spent countless hours thinking, planning, and worrying, and now the most important choice of her life awaited her. The proposal from Wicasa was more than a question of marriage. It was a question of trust, courage, and the future. She walked slowly to the river, carrying the small blanket her grandmother had sewn, a symbol of her own roots and respect. Wicasa was already there, waiting patiently, his eyes calm yet full of understanding. He did not speak at first, letting her gather her thoughts. The river flowed steadily, a reminder of life's continuity and the way challenges could pass if met with wisdom. Elena took a deep breath, feeling the cool morning air fill her lungs, and realized that she was ready. She had spent weeks learning about the village, observing courage, and understanding the hearts of those around her. She had faced fear and uncertainty, and she knew now that her choice must come from honesty and respect. "Wicasa," she said softly, turning to him, "I have thought about everything, my home, my people, and the life you have shared with me. I have seen the courage, wisdom, and care in your community, and I understand what it means to be part of it. I am ready to accept your proposal." Wicasa's face softened into a gentle smile. "Elena," he said, "you have made this choice with your heart and your mind. That is true courage. You honor us by choosing with understanding and respect. Together, we will continue to learn, live, and protect what is good and right." News of her decision spread quickly within the village. The elders nodded approvingly, the women offered smiles of support, and the children ran to see her with curiosity and excitement. Elena felt a deep sense of belonging she had never known in her life. She realized that this choice was not just about her own happiness, but also about becoming part of a community that valued respect, understanding, and care above fear and anger. Her heart swelled with gratitude and affection for the people who had welcomed her, trusted her, and taught her the meaning of courage. However, Elena also knew that her decision would not be universally accepted. Back in the frontier town, the over 200 people who had opposed her journey were still angry and fearful. Some still wished her harm, while others struggled to understand the choice she had made. Rumors spread about her marriage in the village, and tensions remained high. But Elena had grown stronger. She understood that her life was no longer dictated solely by her town or their fears. She had chosen a path of respect, love, and courage, and she would follow it with integrity. Preparations for the union were made carefully. The village worked together to create a small ceremony that reflected their traditions and values. Each detail was filled with meaning: the songs, the dances, the blessings, and the shared stories. Elena participated fully, learning the significance of each act and understanding the depth of their culture. She realized that this ceremony was not only a celebration of love, but also a symbol of trust, unity, and the bridging of two worlds. Wicasa guided her gently, ensuring that she felt comfortable and included in every aspect of the preparations. On the day of the union, the village gathered near the river. Children laughed and ran between the adults, elders spoke quietly to one another, and the air was filled with a mixture of joy, respect, and anticipation. Elena wore a simple but elegant dress, adorned with symbols of both her own heritage and the village's traditions. Wicasa stood beside her, calm and dignified, a symbol of the leadership and wisdom that had guided the community through the recent trials. The ceremony began with songs and prayers, and Elena felt a deep connection not only to Wicasa, but also to the people around her. As they exchanged vows, Alina's thoughts returned briefly to the frontier town. She knew that over 200 people still wished them harm, and that some would never understand the choice she had made. But in that moment, by the river, surrounded by the community that had accepted her, she felt a sense of peace and purpose. She understood that her courage had allowed her to reach this point, and that her decision was an act of both love and bravery. Wakasa smiled as he spoke his vows, and Alina responded with sincerity and respect. Together, they created a bond that was both personal and symbolic, representing understanding between two worlds. After the ceremony, the village celebrated in their way. Food was shared, songs were sung, and stories were told. Alina participated fully, laughing with the children, speaking with the elders, and enjoying the simple joys of life in the community. She realized that happiness was not just about personal comfort or safety. It was about connection, respect, and living truthfully. She also understood that challenges would continue to arise, but with courage, patience, and wisdom, they could be met without fear. In the days that followed, Alina and Wakasa worked together to strengthen the bonds between the village and the frontier town. They sent messages explaining the peaceful intentions of the marriage and the respect with which Alina had approached the community. Slowly, some people in the town began to understand. While not everyone agreed or approved, a few recognized the courage it had taken for Alina to make this choice. The union became a symbol of hope, demonstrating that understanding and respect could bridge even the deepest divides. Alina also continued to learn from the village. She discovered new skills, gained insight into traditions, and deepened her understanding of life, courage, and responsibility. She realized that this journey had transformed her. Not only had she found love, but she had also discovered her own strength, resilience, and ability to act with integrity despite opposition. The people she had feared would never understand her choice no longer held power over her heart. She had chosen her path, and in doing so, had created a life filled with meaning, respect, and connection. Months passed, and the village thrived. Alina and Wakasa faced challenges, as all couples do, but they faced them with a shared sense of purpose and understanding. The frontier town gradually began to recognize that the fears and anger of some did not define the truth of her actions. Some people even visited the village, cautiously at first, but later with respect, to witness the harmony and courage that had made this union possible. Alina and Wikasa's life together became a living example of the power of patience, understanding, and love in the face of fear and opposition. Alina often reflected on her journey. She remembered the warnings from her family, the whispers of the townspeople, and the fears that had once filled her heart. She also remembered the courage she had found within herself, the lessons learned from the village, and the strength of Wikasa's guidance. She understood that the life she now lived was the result of choices made with integrity, bravery, and respect for both worlds. She had not only chosen love, but had also chosen to honor the people who had trusted her and to bridge understanding between cultures. As years passed, the story of Alina and Wakasa became known in both the village and the frontier town. People spoke of the courage it took for her to make her choice, of the wisdom with which Wakasa and the village had guided her, and of the love that had grown in the midst of fear and opposition. Children learned the story as a lesson in bravery, honesty, and respect. Adults reflected on it as an example of the power of understanding and patience. And Alina herself, looking back on those early days by the river, knew that the decision she had made had changed her life forever, not just in happiness, but in the depth of courage and connection she had discovered. In the quiet moments by the river, Alina often thought of the past. She remembered the 200 people who had wished them harm and understood that their fear had been powerful but ultimately limited. She realized that courage, wisdom, and integrity were stronger than fear, and that love guided by respect could create lasting change. She felt gratitude for every person who had helped her on her journey, every lesson learned, and every challenge overcome. Her life with Wakasa became a living testament to the idea that even in the face of overwhelming opposition, it was possible to act with honesty, bravery, and love. And so, Alina and Wakasa lived their lives together with purpose and joy. Their union was not just a marriage but a symbol of hope, a bridge between cultures, and a story of courage that would be remembered for generations. The village thrived, the relationships between communities grew stronger, and Alina herself became a figure of bravery and wisdom. Her journey had begun with curiosity, but it ended with understanding, love, and a life built on courage and respect. She had faced fear, opposition, and uncertainty, and had emerged stronger, wiser, and more connected than she had ever imagined.